Everyone, it's now time we'd like to bring you to emphasize on the unique opportunity in Southeast Asia. Yes, we'd like to talk about how to accelerate the entrepreneurial ecosystem technology startup. And I would like to talk about our next speakers. He devoted himself in helping to develop local ecosystem across the globe, which empower incredible people to develop and generating that business. It's now time for the keynotes on accelerating startups and entrepreneurship in Mekong Subregion and what's next. Please join me in welcome on stage Mr. Mike Ducker, ERR at JE Austin, Associate Founder Ecosystem Forum Director at Tiger Mekong.
Let me first answer a very important question I know everyone has in their heads from the last presentation. Yes, I'm an American and I have seen The Wizard of Oz, and so has my wife and daughter, so that's a very true statement. I changed my presentation a little bit and I apologize. I actually want to talk about what we need to do next in supporting ecosystems, and I'll talk a little bit about the Mekong subregion, but I think I'll go beyond that. I think it's incredibly important what the next phase is. So as a good mentor I will try to challenge people of what we need to do next. Just a little bit about myself. I'm sort of like Forrest Gump. I'm sure I'm not the smartest person in this room, but I've been lucky enough to travel around the world, work on different programs, and I've learned a lot, especially because I've met lots of smart people. I used to run the global entrepreneurship program that the US government had in Egypt. I currently advise the Swiss government on a program that's in 6 different countries. I run this ecosystem forum to kind of share best lessons in Washington, D.C. And for the last 3 years, I've been running the Tigers Mekong program, which is a program sponsored by the U.S. State Department. And it's actually been incredibly honorable and fortunate for me to run such a program, because it's been an incredible transformation the region has had from 3-4 years ago to today. If we look at the different countries out there, maybe 3-4 years ago there was a bunch of startup weekends, a bunch of hackathons, but now we have programs. We have programs that push entrepreneurs through the hard parts of building their business. And now we have really businesses that are trying to create new value out there. It's so important for that. And what makes, I think, this region different than other regions I've worked in is this region has a lot more stability and forward-looking. If you look, and this is an incredible opportunity for the Mekong region in Asia, if you look at Europe and you look at the US, politics is dominant, and this is just reality. And we are not focusing on these things right now. So it's an incredible opportunity for Asia to grab new market opportunities. I also see over the last 3-4 years, more of the business community getting into the ecosystem community. As Susan said, there's nothing more important than mentorship, and I see a lot more of that that's happened. And the government's getting involved, incredibly important. If you look at, and when we talk about finance, to be very honest, when I meet entrepreneurs, I don't see finance as an issue. Most good companies are getting money. I've met lots of foreign investors. I've met a lot of local investors. Money is not an issue in this region compared to other regions in the world I've been to. And again, if you talk about transformation, look at Cambodia and Myanmar 3-4 years ago and today, very different. Even in Laos, there's now angel investment happening in that country, Laos. So incredible transformation in this region. And that's important because now we are talking about entrepreneurs. 5-10 years ago, we were talking about SMEs. But what we have learned is the size of the company does not matter in driving your economic growth. What matters is the intention of the company to grow, to create new products, go after new markets. These are the things that drive economic growth. And more economic studies by Kaufman, OECD, and others have shown there's only a minority of firms that actually create jobs in your countries. These are the jobs, these are the entrepreneurs who are driving new products and growing their companies. And that's why entrepreneurship has truly become global. 2 years ago, I was in Nairobi, Kenya, and this young man came to me and says, I'm starting an accelerator in Mogadishu. Can you help me? There's not a part of the world does not have a startup program right now. In Syria, places you would never think of programs, there are now startup programs, and the governments are getting involved. We have presidents, we have prime ministers, all having their policies, all saying, big words. We have subsidized funding, we have government venture funds, we have programs that bring in international entrepreneurs and founders into your countries. But I'll be very, very frank and honest. These are all workarounds. These are not getting to the big issues about entrepreneurs. So what I wanted to do is challenge you. And I don't know if people have read the book, The Hard Things About Hard Things. It's really about startups and building businesses is not easy. It's difficult. And the same thing goes with ecosystems. It is not easy to build ecosystems. So I have 5 challenges that I see in building sort of the getting to the next phase of building your ecosystem. Because everyone is doing the same thing. Everyone has a startup program, a boot camp, a lean startup program, some subsidized funding. It all looks the same. But no one really wants to do the hard things. And I think the countries that will do the hard things are going to succeed next. So let me try to say what I think those are. This is a long-term commitment to building your economy. You can't have a hackathon today and expect economic impacts tomorrow. This takes years in the making. And what the ecosystem needs is long-term committed funding over decades. Not over a political cycle, not over a project cycle. It needs long-term commitment. If you look, as I design programs and do it with governments and others, and you start designing the process, this doesn't happen overnight. The companies I worked with in Egypt 5-6 years ago, they now have like 50, 60 people. But they took a long time to build those companies. So I think governments and policymakers need to make a long-term commitment to their ecosystems, and not just their own programming, but programming in the community. So it's really hard time to do the hard things to make things happen. Number 2, when I used to advise entrepreneurs 5-10 years ago, we talked about blue ocean opportunities. We said, don't go in markets where there's a lot of regulation. Don't do that. You're just going to get killed. But today, startups are a lot more braver. They are taking on embedded interests. They are challenging the regulations that we have out there right now. We cannot move into the future if we continue to hold on to the past. Creative destruction means there will be something that dies. I'm from Detroit. This is an industry that was an incredible ecosystem 100 years ago. It built an incredible industry that drove the highest GDP per capita in the United States. But today it is a city that went bankrupt and has less than half the population that it once did. They tried to protect the industry, it didn't innovate, and it got killed. We have to let go of some of the old things to let the new things happen. This is one of the biggest issues I have been across and have issues with. FinTech won't happen unless the central banks and market regulators let it happen. It's time to do the hard things. Businesses don't create businesses. People create businesses. We need to focus on good policies that help people survive and achieve things. It was great that we had a panel on education. If you don't educate your people, you will not have great startups. It's as simple as that. There's nothing more important in that. It's always disappointing to me to talk to a government and they want to talk about their VC fund. In reality, they're not educating their people. There's nothing more important than educating their people. It's time to do the hard things. This is what we know. We've learned this from Porter to Eric Ries. Businesses and entrepreneurs need to understand their markets. And this isn't about market studies on the internet. This is about really engaging with those markets on a very personal level. Companies that lose track of that die. This is not new. This has been in MBA courses for decades. But what that means is we need to make sure that industries are not protected and are willing to listen to new startups and how they might be able to change their business models. We can't protect these old industries. They need to get engaged with. And that also means good strategies do not come from a strategic report, it comes from because you really get to talk and to understand the market. You really feel the pressures of competitors. That drives good strategy. When you really get that information on a daily basis. It's time to do the hard things. And lastly, I wrote an article for Inc. magazine about a month ago, and it's on Inc.com. All we do is focus on unicorns, right? There's like 200 and something unicorns in the world, okay? The bigger picture about entrepreneurship is beyond unicorn. It's actually gazelles. This is where we should focus. This is where the economics are. Gazelles are companies that grow at 20% per year over a number of years. Gazelles and unicorns are often not the same thing. But we focus on unicorns. There's hundreds of thousands of gazelles. The data from the United States shows that only about 6% of gazelles actually get venture capital funding. You don't need venture capital funding to be a great company. That is a myth. We need to create programs that help those companies if you truly want to create a company that's going to grow your economy. The reason I've made a decision this year, I'm stopping to tell entrepreneurs what they need to do with their business, and instead, I'm going to fight for entrepreneurs, and I'm going to try to create bigger change because we refuse to do the hard things out there. We refuse to open up markets for entrepreneurs to disrupt. We refuse to let competition enter into the markets. We are not supporting longer-term programming. We are not making longer-term commitments. We need that. We're not creating more diversity in the financial markets, so entrepreneurs don't need that VC fund, but they actually need a line of credit. So I am asking you to start doing the harder things in your countries, to push and drive these changes, because the next great ecosystems will not be driven by another competition, by another VC fund. They will be driven by leaders and policymakers who are brave enough to challenge what's already established. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.